Well, good morning, and welcome to another edition of the AfterBuzz. We apologize for being a couple of minutes late. YouTube was not being very friendly to producer Dave over there, but thankfully he is a magician, made it work, and we're on live with the AfterBuzz. So, welcome. Got a few topics we're going to discuss today, including I got to go be a watchdog at my kid's school last Friday, which was a ton of fun. We'll talk about major events. Obviously, today being 9/11, most people, if not everybody, knows where they were. Obviously, if you're too young, it's something that's a little bit different. But for most people, you remember where you were on 9/11. I even remember where I was on 9/10, the night before. And the reason why I was hungover on the morning of 9/11. But the first thing that we want to kind of kick off today is going to be the NFL Week 1, and to just pump the brakes a little bit there, folks, because it's just 1 week and it's also just Week 1. But before we dive into that, make sure you guys down there are clicking the little like button, the one with little thumbs. And also make sure you're subscribing, rating, reviewing, all the other stuff here when it comes to the AfterBuzz. And if you guys would like to chime in, you are more than welcome to over in the YouTube chat. Questions, comments, anything like that that we're talking about on any topics, even if it's something that's off topic. Even if I can't get to it today, maybe I'll get to it next week on the next edition of the AfterBuzz. But on that note, we'll kick things off with NFL Week 1. It was an exciting Week 1 with a lot of surprises. The Cleveland Browns got steamrolled. They had that big hype train kind of going for the Cleveland Browns. The Dallas Cowboys kind of dominated the Giants. I wasn't able to watch that much football because we were at Cattleman's on Sunday, and there's no service out there. So I had no idea how the Cowboys were doing until I got in the car, and as we were heading back, I think there was maybe a few minutes to play, and the Cowboys were already up 35-17. It was just, I think they had like one more turnover to get or something like that. But it was a fun weekend of football. I did get to watch most of the Patriots-Steelers game on Sunday, though I was feeling like absolute dog crap. When you're starting to get sick and it progressively gets worse and worse throughout the day. I'd been battling it since last week. Like just through all the week, it was like in my nose and my throat, and I just wasn't feeling right. But I'm hoping like I can, I'm taking my Zicam and I'm hoping I can fend this stupid thing off. And then Sunday it finally hit me. And as we got back home right before the Patriot game was going to start, like it really started to hit me full force. That's why I wasn't on. That's why I wasn't on the show on Monday because man, it hit me big time. But one of the reasons why I want to talk about it too is because everybody seems to jump the gun a bit when it comes to games in the NFL. And one of the reasons that I think I have more insight on this is being a Patriots fan. I realize that 1 week doesn't mean a whole lot because if you want to rewind last year, Patriots got beat up by the Titans. Patriots got beat up by the Detroit Lions. They went 11-5 over the regular season, which was one of the worst regular season records by a Bill Belichick team. But they still ultimately won the Super Bowl. So there's all these people who want to look at this past Sunday's games or even Monday's games, and we're going to start writing people off. The Cleveland Browns, it was all hype. They're terrible. They're going to go 0-16 again. You need a few game sample size here before you can make those conclusions. When it comes to the Cowboys, I was really happy that they did what they did, where they beat a team that they should beat. The Giants were not a better team. The Cowboys were a vastly more talented team. They should have won that game. But you need a bigger sample size for these teams before you can really get an idea of who they are. Case in point, last year, remember what happened in New Orleans, Week 1? Fitzmagic went with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers into New Orleans and beat them 48-40. And remember, Fitzpatrick had all of these throwing yards for the first few games of the season. It was going to be amazing. They ended up going, I believe, 5-11 last year was where the Buccaneers ended up. And the Saints made it to the NFC Championship game, one blown call away from making it to the Super Bowl. So again, Week 1 does not mean a whole lot in the grand scheme of things. Again, also last year, the New York Jets, they thumped on the Lions 48-17 Week 1 last year. And the Jets would only win 3 more games all season long. They ended up go 4-12. And for the Lions, they finished 6-10. Again, one of those 6 wins was a pretty dominating victory over the New England Patriots. So if you want to see a lot of these kind of headline stories from these weeks where it's like, okay, we need to pump the brakes a little bit, you can find the blog up at buzzadamshow.com that literally says pump the brakes, folks. That was just week 1 of the NFL. Like I understand the point of getting excited, and I'm not going to say don't ever do that, but have tempered expectations when you're only looking at a 1-game sample. Remember, it was almost a decade ago, not quite, maybe like 6 or 7 years ago. No, yeah, because it was the season when they it was 5 years ago when the Patriots just got the absolute snot kicked out of them by the Kansas City Chiefs. They ended up beating the Seahawks for the Super Bowl that year. So 1 week sample size is not a lot. Now, of course, you don't want that shit in the playoffs. Like that's where it's just going to end you. But it really just kind of depends on when you get good, because in that same article that I have at buzzadamshow.com, I'm talking about the Baltimore Ravens of 2012. They lost 4 of their final 5 games of the season that year. They went on to win the Super Bowl. It's just it depends on when you get hot, man. And sure enough, the Patriots got hot last year. Yeah, David B says 2 years ago, Patriots were beat in week 1 by the Chiefs, and then they still went to the Super Bowl. So it's 1 week. I'm not saying don't get excited. Just let's not start booking trips to the Super Bowl or start trying to figure out who we're going to draft number 1 overall, depending on who your team is there. Orlando is asking Jets or Browns on Monday Night Football. I'm going to be pushing for the Browns. See, it'd be a really fun story if the Browns kind of went 4-12 with all the talent, with Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry and Baker Mayfield and all the talking coming out of Cleveland. If they went 4-12, but I always have to go against AFC East teams. Doesn't matter who it is. That got to go against them. I mean, it's the same thing. Like you're producer Dave, Cowboys fan?
Cowboys fan, yes.
So being a Cowboys guy, you got to root against NFC East teams. Like you're never going to root for the Giants. You're not going to root for the Redskins. You're not going to root for the Eagles. Hell, Eagles had to come back. I mean, the Eagles were talked about as probably the best team in the NFC. Now that they finally have Carson Wentz healthy, they had to squeak out a come-from-behind victory over Washington, who also, now they're out with Darius Geis again, who got hurt yet again. But yeah, so it was just, it's week 1. I'm glad it's back. Football is great. Love it. We won our fantasy game, by the way, me and the wife.
Nice.
We got our fantasy win because Dak Prescott, he's blew it up, obviously, with the huge game that he had.
Amazing.
And Christian McCaffrey put up major points, so we got a pretty solid victory. Although there was one guy in the league. It's the dad of the twins I used to babysit when I was still living in Portland a few years ago. And, man, he put a stud team together because he scored 200 points.
Wow. It's
a PPR league, so you're getting a few extra points there. But still, 200 points is a massive undertaking. And he did it in 1 week. So there you go. Javi's in here. He's saying Cowboys all day, buddy. Yes. Good. Look.
Hell yeah.
Be happy for the Cowboys. I think they looked good. I didn't see the game live, but I watched some highlights. It's going to take Zeke a couple of games to really get into game shape because he missed training camp. Marshall Faulk even said it when they're down in Cabo. He can only get him ready so far. That's, you're not going to be able to simulate the exact kind of conditions. So it's going to be a couple of games. And I think they compared his stats to when Emmitt Smith held out back in 94. Was that the year where he held out for the first 2 games? They signed him to his contract. They came back and won the Super Bowl that year. And Emmitt Smith's stats were almost identical. I mean, they're very similar to what Ezekiel Elliott put up in his first game this year. So just, if you're jumping off the Ezekiel Elliott train, pump the brakes a little bit on that as well. But anyway, football's back. It's great. It was awesome. I'm looking forward to everything that the Patriots are going to be doing this year because it should be an exciting team. Tom Brady actually has wide receivers. Think of a time when he's actually had wide receivers. Other than the year he had Randy Moss and Wes Welker, even then, they did a Football Life with Bill Belichick, where they followed him in the 2009 season. That was the year that they made the playoffs and then immediately got the boot by the Ravens in the first round. I think it was in Foxborough. The Ravens came in and just beat the snot out of them. But they followed him that season, and it goes to show you just how brilliant Bill Belichick is when it comes to being a football coach. During the season, he's sitting there with his offensive coordinators, and he flat out says it. He goes, if they stop Moss and Welker, we have no offense. and that's ultimately what killed them that year. I mean, this was a couple years removed from the perfect regular season, and they had no running game, nothing. And he's like, "We're done." He goes, "If they shut those two down, we've got to figure something else out here because nothing's working." And ultimately, that's what ended up biting him in the ass. Um, but yeah, it's also, and yeah, and I believe that the Patriots have the easiest schedule out of anybody as well if you compare it to last year's. But anyway, so it's week 1. It's back. Let's all enjoy it. Just don't get ahead of yourselves a little bit, whether it's positive or negative. Second topic here when we move on the AfterBuzz is I got to be a watchdog last Friday, and it was pretty stinking cool, man. So to be a watchdog, it's basically you sign up, you go to the school that your kid is in, and you kind of patrol the hallways. You're there as a safety measure. You're there making sure there's nothing weird going on, and you get to help out in some of the classrooms. And it was great, man. I took my kid to school, hung out with them for a little bit. Mainly hung out kind of on the blacktop playground area, I guess is what you would call it, because they multiple recesses and PEs and all this other stuff going on there. So I was up there a lot, I got a wicked farmer stand from Friday, like serious farmer stand going. I'm not sure if I still have it, if it's faded at this point, but yeah, so it was a ton of fun. I got to kind of meander the hallways. I got roped into a PTA meeting, which is pretty cool. I've never been to one of those. Unfortunately, they do them a little bit too early. I wouldn't be able to make it to those on a regular basis. But the one thing is my kids' school, they got a really good set of parents that are there for the kids. And it was a really positive meeting. I was glad that I was able to sit in on it. Kind of hang out more. Got to go have lunch with my kid. I got to have a school lunch. It's been forever. It was chicken nugget day, which was great. Which brought back memories because my dad, he used to show up. He would come hang out at school with my sister and I the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, because now they get the whole week off. We didn't get that when I was a kid. We had to go to school Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then you got Thursday, Friday off. And he would always go Wednesday with us to school. And he always told us it's because he liked the turkey and mashed potatoes they served in the cafeteria.
Oh, nice.
I don't think that's really it. I think he wanted to go hang out at school with us. But no, it was a ton of fun. I got to go help out with some other classes. There was a first grade class I got to go help out with their sight words, which was really cool. And it's interesting seeing the kids how vastly different they are. And especially when it comes to learning. There's some kids that went up there when it came to the sight words, boom, and there's no mistakes because the teacher told me, she was like, just highlight the words that they kind of struggle with. And then there's other kids that you can tell they just aren't quite getting it. And you don't want to give them the answer, but you want to guide them in the right direction. And it's interesting where there's they'll start off and they stumble through the first couple of words, and you're like, oh crap, this one's going to take a while because there's like 30 words on the page, but then they hit their flow and it's like boom, 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 boom. Like it was really, really cool being able to sit in on that stuff. So then we took donuts for my kid's class, wish her happy birthday. She had a great birthday. We had a birthday party out at Adventure Zone, which was awesome, which by the way, I do recommend, if you do have a kid and you're looking for a place to throw a birthday, hit up Adventure Zone. It's pretty great, man, because they got good staff out there, a lot of fun stuff to do. Kaplowitz came out because his kids are around the same age as mine. So got them out playing some miniature golf. And I basically got to sit back and enjoy a beer with Kaplowitz to kind of cap off the night, which was a ton of fun. But yeah, so, it was just, it was a good time to be a watchdog. If you have the opportunity, if you're able to, if you can take a day off and they've asked you to be a watchdog, I cannot recommend doing it enough. It's a genuinely unique experience because you get to be there. You do the announcements, the morning announcements. So they kept, like, my wife and daughter kept asking me, are you going to do any voices? And then when I saw they actually do it into a phone, it's like I can't do a voice because it's like you won't hear it. Like it won't come through. It won't come through the speakers. Like it'll be all warbled. Because I thought about doing a voice. There's one that I do for a character called Sherman, and his name's Sherman. Oh my goodness gracious! Can you believe that it's this girl's birthday today? That's amazing. The only problem is you're not going to be able to hear that over the through the speakers. But there was one so I just kind of did I did a little Good Morning Vietnam kind of a thing, like a good morning to the elementary school. And then and they have a script for you. It's like, my name is so and so, and my kid is blank, who's in grade blank, blah 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 blah. And so I did that, and then I also, gave her a big happy birthday shout out at that point as well.
Mhm.
So then they have words of wisdom that you read, so it was really cool. So then a little bit later in the day, we get to lunch or recess or something like that, and one of the kids comes up to me, and he's like, "Hey," because you got your visitors sticker on one side, and then my Watchdog sticker on the other, and this kid comes up and goes, "Hey, was that you on the announcements this morning?" I was like, "Yeah, it was." He goes, "Oh, cool. You sound like a cartoon on the radio." And I was like, and I just I put my hand on the kid's shoulder and I go, "It's a good thing I work in radio." And he goes, "Oh, whoa!" And then he ran off to go tell his friends or something like that. It just blew his mind. It's really cool too, because you're kind of like a celebrity for the day. As you're walking through the hallways, the kids are saying hi to you, and they come up and they give you a high five, or it's a really, really cool experience. So if you're ever able to do it, if you're a father, if you're a grandfather, and if you're able to go be a watchdog, I cannot recommend it enough. It was an absolute just blast being able to hang out with these kids, man. But yeah, so that's my watchdog experience. I'm looking forward to doing it again. I'm gonna maybe do one around Halloween so I can dress up.
That'd be awesome.
I think that'd be kind of cool. It can't be on Halloween because, of course, we have the Halloween parade that we need to be in, so I wouldn't be able to go for that. But I would try to do it. Let me check my calendar here. What day is Halloween on this year?
Thursday or Wednesday, I think.
It is. Why is it not clicking down? There we go. Thursday. Yeah, it's on a Thursday. So I'd maybe do it the Wednesday. The 30th would be kind of a cool time to do it. So moving on, final topic, but we're going to have a bunch of different things here for this final topic, because obviously with today being 9/11, everybody's kind of reminiscing of their story of 9/11, and then somebody in the Facebook chat today had put they remembered where they were for Michael Jackson's death, when they got that news. So one of the things I'm going to talk about is I have some pretty major stories for me of when I remember where I was when X happened, when this event happened, and we'll kick things off here with 9/11. I'll start with my story because it's not nearly as cool as producer Dave's. He's got a great one, so we'll get to that here in a minute. But for mine, it's pretty simple. It was 2001, so I was 21 years old. And it was at a time when 98 to 2001 was a really weird time for me because I had no direction in life. I enrolled in school in 98, right after high school, dropped out after a couple terms to work full time, quit, got rehired, and just all kinds of just wasn't able to really find my footing. I wasn't able to find anything that I wanted to do. But then as I was working at this one lumber company, I found out radio sounds great. So 9/11 happened. And I was telling producer Dave this before we started today, it was either right when I started school again, or I was a week away from starting school again, because I was working as a temp. And as a temp, I was working out at this this auto parts place doing inventory. They just needed some temps to come in to count the parts, and you write it down, and that's the job. That's what you do for 8 hours of the day. It was boring as hell, but it paid. And I specifically remember where I was the night before because I went out drinking with a buddy of mine. And he and I were telling stories, and something that really stands out to me is that he was describing this one story to me, where he was using his cell phone as a prop, as a person, and he was talking about how he collided, and he ended up throwing his cell phone. It's basically kind of what happened in that part of the story. But then I woke up the following morning to my dad knocking on my bedroom door to tell me hey, turn on the news. And at this point, both planes had already hit and the first tower had already fallen. And as I was sitting there, I watched the second tower fall live. That was the only thing I saw live out of all of it. So I remember I got up, I got ready, I headed into work that day at this auto parts store. And it was just such a weird day because you didn't know really what else was going on. because there was all the news stories about like the one plane that hit the Pentagon. There was the planes that believe it was in Pennsylvania that crashed. Everything else. Um, so yeah, it was really weird. And then I remember my buddy Shane was getting married shortly after it, and we were hanging out on his back patio as he was kind of talking about the wedding because I was going to DJ his wedding, and I remember sitting there and it was dark out, and you would see the lights of a plane, and you'd stop and you'd be like, is that ours? Like, is that our military? Because I think this when we were at this point, they still hadn't let any planes in the sky. Our friend Bean, he was trying to make it back for Shane's wedding and almost didn't make it because he was up in Alaska. He was working on like a fishery something or other. And he made it back. He missed the ceremony, but he literally made it back just for the reception, which was great to see him. My sister was in Lebanon, the country. She was overseas.
Really?
Yeah, so my aunt, she's had gone over. She married a man from there, brought him over, and they go visit once or twice a year. And they took my sister this year. Back in 2001. I remember my sister was over there. I had a friend of mine. He was in Italy, and and they were kind of stuck in the airports and stuff at this time. So it was just a really, really, really awkward time, really weird time, very surreal time. That was going on. So that's my story. Producer Dave has to tell you about what he was doing September 11th, 2001.
So I'm prior military. I was stationed over in Fort Benning, Georgia, in the Army. And that morning, we were prepping. We were up. I was in the barracks, getting ready for the day we were going to go on an airborne operation, just a training operation. And my roommate at the time walked in and said, "Hey, turn on the news. One of the towers just got hit. There may have been an accident, but we weren't too sure." At that point, the news of it or the information was a little scattered. But when we saw the second, I guess, plane hit the tower, that's at that point we kind of understood that we were being attacked at that point.
This wasn't an accident.
Correct. So we went into work, and the barracks are normally attached to the same little compound that we were working at, and they had grounded the airborne operation, the training operation that day, and we spent pretty much that morning getting all our bags ready for deployment. And sure enough, about a month later, October 19th, 2001, is when we conducted a nighttime airborne operation into Afghanistan. It's called Rhino. Operation Rhino. That's where I got my first night combat jump into a foreign country. I was 19 at the time.
Damn.
So to jump out of a plane in pitch black darkness. I think it was like a combat altitude, like 500 feet. I ended up breaking my foot on that jump. Still did the mission,
Jesus.
still went on and was awarded a Purple Heart for that. But it was a real, again, a surreal moment to kind of wake up and see what was going on that particular day. But also, I was proud to have participated in an operation saying, "Hey, we're not going to let this go. We're gonna go and bring the fight to the people that did this."
Mm-hmm.
So since 2001, I think there's a few military veterans here in the chat with us. We've been deployed several times. In Operation Enduring Freedom and in both Iraqi Freedom. So that's what happened that day.
Well, we need everybody now to thank Producer Dave here and everybody else in the chat. Thank you for your service, man. It's something that I never had the balls to do. I've had longtime friends. One of my best friends and one of the guys at my wedding, he was in the reserves when it all went down, and he ended up getting shipped overseas too for, I believe it was Iraqi Freedom, was what he was involved in as well. And he was gone for a while. Man, it's so strange to think so long ago that he was over there. And that you're over there, and like all these different things that were going on, and just how different it was back then. But if you have served, or if anything else, then everybody, thank you for your service, and thank you for giving up. Like literally, you doing that is why we have the right to sit and be idiots in front of this camera right now, and just be an absolute moron. It's because of that. It's because of the bravery of guys like you. So thank you for that.
Oh, I appreciate that.
So now we got to do a weird, awkward transition.
Yeah.
Because like. somebody brought up in the Facebook chat earlier about kind of remembering where you are during big events and where you like the news was broken to you. Um, like a big event that, and unfortunately it's going to be kind of dark here for a couple of minutes, but one of the big events that happened to me, it's one of those things that I've been blogging about with that 12-year-old journal that I have, where my uncle passed away. I mean, that's just seared into my brain, that it was Mother's Day 1993, and we were at my grandma's house. I still remember her answering the phone, her freaking out, my aunt freaking out. And I think it was my dad who ended up taking the phone call to try to figure out what the hell was going on. So it's these things that are kind of seared in your brain. And unfortunately for a lot of people, it's generally negative things that these things kind of, because it's usually like the death of somebody or something like that. It's kind of one of these things that kind of is always seared into your brain. Um, uh, Let me see here. What kind of order do I want to do this in? We'll go with the first one because I remember the O.J. Simpson chase. I remember watching that. I remember exactly where I was. I was downstairs in my parents' basement, and basement was pretty large. It was separated between two. You had the main TV room, and when I was younger, there was a secondary TV room that I would go watch a play. It was like a playroom basically. And I remember because it was at the same time as the NBA Finals, and I remember like this picture in picture, and I remember watching the NBA Finals, and then they just have this footage of this white Bronco driving through the freeways of Los Angeles. Like, it was so weird, but I still remember exactly where I was at that time, and that was God, what year would that have been? Because there's two that happened. So that would have been '94, and this was the murders occurred June 13th, 1994. Um, so then that chase would have happened right after that, because the other one on here that I was going to talk about too is getting the news that Kurt Cobain had passed away, and that was April 5th, 1995. I think I brought this up on the AfterBuzz before, where I was at when I got that news. There was a thing called Odyssey of the Mind, and it was for the nerdy kids. It was for they had one that was kind of arts based and one that was science based. And I was in the one that was science based. We had Star Wars for our theme. I was dressed up as I think I think I was Obi-Wan Kenobi. My buddy Zach was Luke Skywalker. We turned a trash can into R2D2. And anyway, so it was really cool. I'll get into more uh, Odyssey of the Mind stuff on a future episode. I'll even make a note right now so that I can bring it up later. Oh, did you really? Oh, there you go. Got a fellow Odyssey of the Mind guy here. Did you do the more science based one or the arts one?
We did both.
Oh, you competed in both.
Well, I think you can only compete in one event, but I think when we first started, it was more the arts, the arts side of the events, and then towards the end, the last 2 years, we get into the science.
Oh, see, I did it the 1 year, okay. And it was there was one group. I think the one group was all girls, and they were reciting a play or something like that, and that was what they were being judged on. Ours was you had a series of cars, and there was balloons set a specific distance away, and there was obstacles, and you had to design cars. Couldn't use remote control, but you had to design cars to go across and pop the balloons. So yeah. So anyway, so we'll get into more. We'll get into some super nerd stuff next week, man. That's gonna be great. That's so cool that you did Odyssey of the Mind as well. But anyway, so let me see here. What else? So yeah. So I remember we won. I think it was district or county or whatever it was. We came in first place, and then we moved on to state. And state was down at Oregon State University, which is in Corvallis. So we were down there competing in state, and I remember we're in this like billiard hall on the campus, and I just remember looking up and seeing a TV and seeing a picture of Kurt Cobain with the dates, and I just remember like, oh my God, Kurt Cobain died. And then all of a sudden, everybody else was with me. They were like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And I pointed to the TV, and it was I believe it was Kurt Loder on MTV News breaking the news that Kurt Cobain had passed away, and it was just so weird. And that's one of those things I can literally see right now. Like, my memories take me right back to it. One of the interesting things was that the person that brought up on the Facebook chat earlier today was that they remember where they were when Michael Jackson died. I remember where I was, not necessarily right when I got the news, but I remember I was working in Florida, and I remember being up on the fourth floor of our building, which is where the traffic department was, the ladies that scheduled the commercials. And I think I broke the news to them because I was like, "Yeah, did you hear that Michael Jackson passed away?" And they were like, and this shook them to their core. Like they were obviously big, gigantic Michael Jackson fans, and you could see that they were like visibly like, like, "Oh my God, like I can't believe Michael Jackson died." And in the back of my brain, all I could think was, "Dude, he touches kids." Like that's like it's such a fucked up thing to do, but like the honest to God, like because like for me, it was like, yeah, Michael Jackson died, like. Like it didn't affect me really. But I mean, obviously, how it affected them affected me, and I didn't want to be crass. I didn't want to, because first of all, somebody passed away, but just in the back of my mind, I'm like, dude, he touched kids, like you're freaking out over a pedophile. Like that's like the thoughts that are like swimming through my brain as that news was being broke. Another one that happened when I was down in Florida was Anna Nicole Smith, because I was on the air when that happened, and she died like a mile from the radio station because she died at I think it was the Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino, and people are running around, and like TMZ was already a thing, but not quite. Like this was one of those weird times where do we trust TMZ and do you trust Twitter and these other sources? And it was a really awkward thing. And so, we're trying to confirm. And man, I did it so fucking awkward on the air. It came off so bad. And I want to say I went into Nickelback's Animals after I made the announcement because it was at the top of the hour. And I just came on the air and it was really somber. And I was like, I'm here to report that Anna Nicole Smith has passed away at the Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino. She was blah, blah, blah years old. Here's Nickelback Animals. I still pre-sold the fucking song like an idiot, man. And I left the studio, and there's like four people standing there, and they're like, "You really pre?" And I'm like, "Dude, I froze, man." I'm like, I didn't know how to transition out of it. Like, how do you do that? Like, how do you go from announcing somebody dying into a song? I'm like, so I talked about the song. Like, I fucking went into Nickelback's Animals. It was so bad. Oh, I'm such a shithead. Oh, but oh man, it was rough. I'm not gonna lie. But yeah. So anyway, Frank jumping in the YouTube chat saying Chris Farley was the one for him that he remembers. So you can't put that in there and then not type in where you were, Frank. You got to let us all know where you were when Chris Farley died. I don't remember where I was when I got the news, but I do remember that one being a big, big story because there was a class that I took. Where you go to the aquatic center, and for like the first term they teach you how to like swim and how to instruct how to swim, and then you teach like they bring in elementary school kids and then you basically teach them to swim during school. And one of the kids that was in that class with me, he was with another school because I think they came from 3 or 4 different schools where they would meet at this aquatic center for this class, and he was from a different school, but he was a big Chris Farley fan, like huge Chris Farley fan. And I remember this dude was also, he was the one, I played baseball, he played baseball. I knew I wasn't really going to go anywhere with it because shoulder surgery just kind of completely derailed that train. Um, but he kept telling me about how he knows a guy that coaches at Arizona State, and he's been talking about getting a full ride to Arizona State. And when we finally played his team, this dude never even saw the field. Like he never played. Like this guy talked so much shit and he never backed any of it up. And I finally brought it up to him, because he would be a dick during class. And I was like, dude, I'm like, you don't even play. And like I remember the whole class got really quiet. And he was like, what? And I go, how are you going to Arizona State? You don't even fucking touch the field, man. And he was like, oh. And then he fucking shut up. And I'm like, dude, what the fuck, man? But anyway, Frank was apparently in the Target parking lot. Local DJ cut in during a song to update the news. Could have been like me going into Nickelback's Animals for Anna Nicole Smith. There you go. But yeah, so those are some of the major things that I remember where I was at. Like New Year's Eve, 1999. Like I remember where I was at for that. It wasn't anything big, but it was kind of a tradition for me. Late 90s, early 2000s, I would go hang out at my buddy Alan's house with his parents. Like it was their big Filipino family. I'm sticking out like a sore thumb. I'm the lone white guy over there. And again, it's not like I'm just white. I'm like super white, so I really stick out like a luminescent light bulb. And like there's pictures of me with his family. Like his mom was always so tiny that like if I stood behind her and I was so white, it always looked like she had a really bright idea, like the light bulb was shining over her head. And that's Dolly, by the way, which rest in peace. I think she passed away last year. Dolly was an amazing, amazing person. Um, like just absolute hearts of gold. The Aguilar family has. But that's where I was for 1999. And I remember when the ball dropped and everybody kind of stopped momentarily because you're like, oh, is like something going to happen? But at this point, we already knew nothing was really going to happen because we're on the West Coast. And there was already multiple places across the globe that had already celebrated their New Year's 2000, and nothing really big happened because of the guys like the dudes in Office Space, like Michael Bolton, who were there making sure to add the extra 2 digits when it came to the rollover. Because remember, that was the whole plot line. Well, not really the plot line, but that was part of Office Space. That was their job. Theirs was to update the software to have 4 digits instead of just the two. But anyway, so those are really kind of the things that I remember. Are there any big ones that you can think of that that's kind of stand out to you, like a big major event? Like here's one I thought that I did. I thought I remembered Mike Tyson losing to Buster Douglas, but this is kind of interesting how the human brain will scramble things, because for me it was always I was at a Christmas party out at this one family member's house when the news broke. Like we weren't watching it live, but like somebody had like ESPN or something on it. The news broke. Oh my God, Mike Tyson actually lost to Buster Douglas. That couldn't be true because that fight happened in February. It couldn't have been some holiday party. So it's one of those things where for the longest time I always thought that I remembered where I was for this one event, when it's not the case. Now, where I think I might be mixing it up is I might have been at their house for something else, but I don't remember being out there for anything other than holiday parties. So not really sure what was going on there. But yeah, so that's kind of one of those things. David B is saying that he remembers the Challenger exploded. I was really, really, really young for that.
Yeah, I don't remember that.
And I don't think I remember that. I remember the aftermath. There's a lot of these events that you remember the aftermath of the stuff. Like I don't necessarily remember the Berlin Wall coming down, but I remember when the USSR broke up, because this was how cool our teachers were. It was in the 6th grade, and what they did is they clumped our desks together. So it was technically 2 teachers, but they had one of those dividing classroom walls that you could remove. So it was usually open, and they combined it all into one gigantic classroom. And they clumped the desks together, and each clump was a country, one of the ones that had separated. And it was oh, and this is going to take a whole nother conversation here that I'll talk about next week, when it comes down to the serfs. Was it the serfs and the lords? Serfs and czars. I'm sorry. And so if you did really good, you got to be a czar. If you didn't, you got to be a serf. And like if you were a serf, you had to do things for the czar. And somebody had posted this on Facebook, because there was I specifically remember this Time magazine cover. I think it had Gorbachev on it, and that was one that we all got, that we all read in 6th grade. I mean, this was pretty advanced shit for 6th graders, and it was the person had posted that, like, they were reminiscing about the things that we used to do back then. They're like, there's no way that parents would let this fly now, because it was truly creating a class system inside of our school. But it was lesson based. It was really, really cool. Like I would almost push for something like this again, because the only way that you can educate is by talking about it, and by showing kids this kind of stuff. And Unfortunately, I think that far too many people these days would just be too butthurt to be able to go through it without having any issues. Did you ever read or watch The Wave? I think is what it was called.
No.
Um, and so let me see if I can Google this really quick. Yeah, so there's a book called The Wave, and it's by Todd Strasser. And I remember this is just coming from memory. I'm not going to read it from the Wikipedia page, but the whole point of this book was they were learning about Nazi Germany, and a lot of the class is like, well, how could people just go with it? Like, how could people not stand up and say something? How could people be a part of something that's so horrific? So the teacher, again, this is in the book, and I think they turned it into a movie as well. So the teacher does an experiment where he's like, okay, so first off, we're going to start where you guys just get up and just start wandering around the classroom. And so the class does that. And then the teacher's like, okay, now everybody sit down as quickly as possible. And it's just a jumbled fucking mess. Like, it takes them forever to sit down because everybody's bumping into each other and everything else like that. So then what the teacher says is, okay, we're going to do the same things. Get up, start moving around. But when I say go to your seat, I want you guys to go line up at the door and come in single file and then sit down. And all of a sudden, the students see the order of it and how quickly it happens. And they're like, oh my God, that's brilliant. Why haven't we done this before? So all of a sudden, that starts to click. And what it turns into is he creates unknowingly this like mini group where they have their own, I think it's like this because it's meant to look like a wave. They have their own hand signal, and it starts to become exclusive and seclusionary. Is that even a fucking word? Where it's like if either you're in the wave and you're cool, or you're not, and it becomes a real life experiment. It's a brilliant book, brilliant movie. If you haven't checked it out, again, it's called The Wave. But on that note, I've rambled on enough here. Producer Dave, you got anything?
I'm good.
You good?
Yes, sir.
All right. So I do have to tell you guys, we're working on the new camera setup in the studios. We already have one in. David, man, that guy, he was already here when I got here at 4:00 in the morning yesterday. He's already fucking working on this stuff. So God bless David. But we are working on a new camera setup so that, the biggest issue that we have is the audio not matching the video. Hopefully that's all going to be fixed. We'll get better camera angles. Like I've mentioned it on the AfterBuzz. I think it was just last week where I said, I set up the one guest camera and mic a specific way, but the only problem is they don't do it properly, and you end up with the mic stand sitting right in front of the camera. So we'll be able to fix all these other issues, hopefully, and everything else coming about. But on that note, if you guys have anything you want to bring up, do it really, really quick because we're going to shut down this episode of the AfterBuzz. If there's any questions or comments, again, you can always hit us up on the Buzz Adams Morning Show Facebook page. We do check that frequently. You can hit us up on Twitter at Buzz Adams Show. You can find me on Instagram if you would like. It is Brandon_Goat_Coates. Again, that's Coates. You can find me on Instagram over there. On that note, you guys have yourselves a fantastic Wednesday. A big thank you not only to producer Dave being here to produce this and to put in all the work to make sure that we actually went on the air today, but also for the service because, broke his foot, man. The man broke his foot. Was it Afghanistan?
Afghanistan.
And jumping into Afghanistan. So if you ever see producer Dave, give him a high five, give him a handshake, give him a hug, whatever you can to thank him for pretty much all the service he's doing because, again, he's here doing this shit for free. On that note, have yourselves a fantastic Wednesday. We'll see you again next week, 10:30 Mountain Time, here on the KLAQ YouTube channel. And as always, bright and early tomorrow morning, 5 a.m. Mountain Time, for the Buzz Adams Morning Show. See ya.